Okay, we are approaching the end of Mishlei chapter 16. Not that the chapters are real. We're on 31 and there's 32 and 33 left. Okay, we're on 1631. Ateres Tiferes Seva B'derech Tzedaka Timatse. Who would like to try translating that? I will. So Atara is a crown. Okay. They say crown or a wreath. So I don't know if there's a particular material to associate with it, but a crown. So Tiferes is one of those words that like I was trained to translate from Art Scroll. Okay, and Art Scroll translates it as splendor. All right, so that's what I have in my mind. A crown of splendor. Let's see what the BDB translates it as. Beauty, glory. Okay, so let's beauty, glory. I think those are all acceptable here. Comes from pe'er, from like wonder, I guess, or glory. Maybe pe'er is just a translation of glory. So crown of glory is seva. Okay, anyone now want to try translating seva?
Old age.
Yeah, is old age. Okay, so this is a funny one. So seva literally means a hoary head. Okay, hoary meaning like white or gray. All right. Um, but I think old age is probably a good translation. Okay, I'll just say though, literally a hoary head. Okay. And b'derech tzedaka timatse. So on the path, or on the path, or on the way. Actually, say I'll just go with derech here. On the derech, which is the path or the way of tzedaka, which is in Mishlei, righteousness. I'll also do the translation here. Righteousness. You will find it. Okay. Or wait, is it? No, sorry. Timot says it will be found, right? Oops, what did I do there? It will be found. I hope that's right. Let's see. There's no Metzudas David, Metzudas Tzion. There's no Sadigon. You've got the Targum Ksuvim, the Aramaic translation, which I'm pretty sure is just a straight up translation. Because it says Kalila. Kalila is just a crown. Deshavhira, Shavhor, Shivhora, Shivhorta is all glory, splendorous. Sevusa, like the word Saba, like an old person, or old age. But Orcha de Tzidkasa Mishtakcha, on the path of righteousness will be found. Okay, so I think that's the same. And then the Pshita, if that's how you say it, which is the other Aramaic translation, the Syriac translation, it says Klila de I think that's I don't know if it's a typo or conjugation. I'm not familiar with tishbuchta. I think tushbachta is usually what we say. Sivusa uvorcha dizdikusa. Now this is a funny thing. Mishtabcha. To me, this looks like one of these like transcription errors where the chaf became a bet. But the translation of the Pshita is old age is a crown of glory and the way of righteousness is praised. Okay. Take of that what you want from it. Okay. I'm not going to really take that seriously. But I just thought that since we didn't have that many minimalist commentators, then I would share it. Okay, Art Scroll says, yeah, the crown of splendor is old age. It will be found in the path of righteousness. So it says in the path. I guess that's also true. I would say on the path, but in the path is also fine. The Koran, we have no reverse translation. Koran says the hoary head is a crown of glory. That's a good one. Okay. Yeah. All right, that I feel like that has a slightly different connotation here because it's saying that in place of a crown, you have, the or I guess the white hair is the crown. It is found in the way of righteousness, and then Alter says gray hair is a crown of splendor through righteousness attained. Now, I kept the Alter here because I wanted to show a classic mistake that I'm kind of surprised that he makes. Okay, so he acknowledges, he says the Hebrew says through the way of righteousness. And he says the way has been dropped from the translation to avoid cumbersomeness, since it is in any case clearly implied. So what I would say is no, it's not clearly implied. In fact, if you look at the last, I think psukim in this chapter, so we have in pasuk 29, ish chamas yifate rehu v'holichu b'derech lo tov. The man of violence seduces or entices his fellow and leads him on a path that's not good. So we have a path pasuk there. Three pasukim before that, we have earlier. Yesh derech yasher lifnei ish va'achrisa darchei mavis. There is a path that is upright before a person, and its end is ways of death. And I thought we had an orach one. Let's see, orach. Maybe it was okay. So maybe that was in the other one. So in other words, but in Mishlei you also have different words for path. You have orach, which is a way or a path. You have what was another one we had? Salula or masila, which is like another word for path. So I'm kind of shocked. Alter, one of the hallmarks of Alter's translation is that he tries to preserve the nuances of the Hebrew. So I'm kind of surprised that he just drops bederach and just assumes that it means through, when maybe Mishlei is trying to bring up the imagery of a path or the metaphor of a path. So I'm bringing this up just to show that it's I think that's bad translation practice. Okay, so questions and problems. This is a strange pasuk. Maybe I won't express the strangest, so you can ask about it. Yeah. Question. Yeah.
So what is meant by a crown of splendor?
Right. What is meant by a crown of splendor? Okay, I'll say I'll split that into two questions. What kind of crown, and what is the quality of splendor? And I'll point out here also that what do you call it? Actually, what I'm going to do, I'm going to use the Hebrew here, tiferes. Okay. I'm also going to say that it feels like the pasuk is assuming that we already have this category on our mind of a crown of splendor. And what the pasuk is doing is it's identifying, oh, by the way, you want to know what the crown of splendor is? It's that hoary head. It's the white hair. So that I think just adds to the question about what in our experience is this? Okay, Rivki.
Yeah, so I hope that this makes sense because I came a few minutes into the explanation. Yeah, it's really interesting. My question is the relationship between the two. My initial assumption is that it's through the second half, meaning that on the path, then you'll find this, but it almost seems like it might be the opposite. So I guess my question is, what's the relationship?
Yeah, right. What is the relationship between the two halves? Right? So it sounds like, I think tell me if this is the intuition that you're picking up on here. It sounds like the first half is a virtue in its own right, but the second half is telling you how to get this, right? So how do the two interact? In other words, it seems like you need some element of old age, and it seems like you need something about the path of tzedakah. So what's the recipe? Yeah. Okay, Ayala?
So how is old age, or how is the crown of splendor old age? What's so good about old age? And is it in general? What does old age mean?
Okay, that's a good question. Okay, so what is I'll go ahead and use the Hebrew here also. What is seva? What is seva in this context? Okay, is it just old age? Is it old age per se? Or is old age like a stand-in for some other quality? Okay, and then I guess the question here also is similar to is it old age per se, is how, I guess, whatever we say is special about old age here, to what extent is this true of all old people? And what about those for whom it is not true? Right? Yeah. I feel like no matter what side of the political divide you're on, you could probably find a couple examples of people who have old age and do not seem to have a crown of glory, or relationship to tzedakah for that matter. Yeah, Isaiah?
Just to add to that question,
Yeah.
it also raises the question, is it not available? Is it only available to old age? Or is it?
Oh, that's a good question also, right. Yeah. Likewise, is this crown of splendor uniquely attained in old age, or can it be attained by someone who isn't old? Yeah, Isaiah?
I guess you kind of asked, it's the those of old age who maybe don't have this crown of splendor? Or like, what would they have without if they weren't in the derek of tzedakah?
Okay, yeah. So let's actually broaden that question, because I think we can cast a bigger net for that one, which is what I guess, unlike many Mishlei pasukim, which have two opposites, this seems to only be stating one side. What is the unstated opposite, and what would Shlomo say about it? Yeah, so in other words, you could have that as either, old people who are not on the derech tzedakah, or people who are on the derech tzedakah but who are not old, or people who have neither. It does seem to be that there are, actually, I do want to actually write that, specifically. I know we acknowledge this in the other ones. What would we say? Yeah, bald folks. Yeah, what would we say about old people who are not, let me make this in letters here. Old people who are not on the path of tzedakah. B, people who are on the path of tzedakah who are not old, and C, neither, and then D, bald folks. Okay, if that's a thing, yeah. Ayala?
What is derech tzedakah in this context?
Right.
What is derech ad also?
Yeah. So I guess we should probably, if we're being responsible, which is a good idea in general, we should probably ask, what does tzedakah mean in this context? What does derech mean in this context? I'll say, shield your eyes, altar. And what is the derech tzedakah? What's the difference? What does derech add? Derech add to plain tzedakah, which I think is probably the best way to ask the question. In other words, I don't think it would make sense if it just said on the derech. Yeah, Isaiah.
So I feel like crowns are either like on something or they're for something. Like you crown something. You don't just have like a crown that sits on its own.
Right.
It makes sense. So like, what is the crown? A crown on, or who is like? What's the crown? What do we mean? What's the crown? Does the crown relate to anything else besides itself, or is it just a standalone crown?
Okay, that's a good question. I feel like the implication here from the fact that it is calling the white hair a crown, that it's kind of assumed that the crown is on the person. But I'll add this to the first question. Okay, is this are we sure that this crown is on a head, or is it a standalone crown? Like, even when we talk about standalone crowns, I know Isaiah, you and I spent inordinate amount of time talking about standalone crowns on Shabbos, but like, let's say, for example, the crown of Torah, or the crown of Kahuna, or the crown of Malchus, those may be depicted as being not on a head, but the point of it is that you put it on a head. So I feel like it is implied here. So I'm not so bothered by that question.
I guess I was bothered because I wasn't thinking of Seva as specifically like the hair on their head.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's why it's important to keep in mind the literal translation, hoary head. Yeah, Rivki?
Yeah, so I'm not sure if this is included in like the last question about the unstated, opposites.
Yeah.
But I guess I'm having a bit of trouble exactly understanding what the consequences are. Like, it almost seems like there's just a lot of statements.
Right.
Yeah, but like, I'm not seeing like, is the consequence like righteousness? Is it like being old? Like, I don't
Yeah.
really.
Yeah. What is the practical application, and unstated consequence, right? How do we translate this? How do we translate this into decision making? Yeah, Ayala.
Similar to that, but what is good about a Teres Tiferes? Like a crown of splendor.
Right. I'm gonna actually put that as part of the practical question here, which is like, I get why tzedakah is good. Okay, see all Mishlei pasukim about tzedakah and tzaddikim. But what's so great about this this crown? Feel like there are a couple more questions that we need to ask here that I can see. Yeah, Isaiah?
Who's the audience? The
Yeah,
young people.
Yeah, so this is a variant here, okay? Who is the audience? Who's the intended audience? And when is the intended audience? Okay. In other words, like, is this for someone who is old or someone who is planning on being old? Okay, that's kind of what I was alluding to in the shiur description, right? In other words, it does seem like this is for someone who is, on their way to become old, but like, I don't know. One of the two requirements it says here is a hoary head. So like maybe I can get on the tzedakah train or path, when I'm already old, yeah. There was a really bad Purim skit a long time ago that, the whole thing in our yeshiva, not just our yeshiva, but like the Brisker Derech focuses on the whole question is what? You ask what before why, but there's a whole Brisker Derech skit, or there's a Purim skit in yeshiva about the question is when, and the whole alternate Derech that's around when. So that came to mind here. So for those who remember that was before everyone's time here. All right, so that was one of the two questions I was looking for. I think there's another question, which we sometimes ask, but I feel like here it is
What's the subject?
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, what is the subject? That is not what I was thinking, but that is a good. What is the subject? Old age, tzedakah, crown, a person's derech. Yeah. Any other question? Yeah, Rivki?
I don't think this is what you're looking for, and it could be included, but
Yeah.
I'm curious, for me, like we started discussing what does it mean to have a crown of splendor. Are we implying that like the crown, so when I think of a crown, we place it on someone.
Yeah.
So is the person, and I guess it's just elaborating on what we already said, but is the person actively doing something beyond old age that's making them gain that? Or am I just thinking like in the wrong, derech in terms of like
No,
what?
I think that is implied by the second half. Like I think there's no way to escape that from the second half. They have to be somehow involved in the derech tzedakah. Yeah. Anyone else? Okay, I think the other question that we're missing here is, what is the Hava Amina? Okay, meaning how would I think? Ooh, what happened there? How would I think one obtains the a crown of splendor? Okay, or alternatively, how what would I think of old age? If not as a crown of splendor. Okay, or possibly other Havaminas. Okay. That I think is all the questions. Let's just check one more time. Ateres Tiferes Seva. Derech Tzedakah Timatse. Oh, I also want to, yeah, Ayala.
I don't know if this is exactly a question, but it's interesting to me that it uses tzedakah as opposed to like chachma or like bina.
Yeah.
I don't know. I would expect it to be like chachma. Like tzedakah seems more of like, I don't know.
Right, that's a good
societal.
question here. Yeah, we should ask that as a separate question, which is, did we? Yeah, I'm going to put this here, which is, I can put this in different places, but like, why specifically tzedakah as opposed to other mishleically good qualities? For example, chachma, say wisdom or uprightness. Yeah. I also want to ask, what is the implication of it will be found? Like, is that a guarantee? Or statistical probability? Does this imply something about the way one encounters it? For example, I was just talking on Friday night at our Shabbos meal about how I'm familiar with two interpretations of this pasuk in Mishlei 3. Ashrei Adam Matzah Chachma v'Adam Yafik Tvuna. Happy / praiseworthy is a person who has found wisdom, a man who can derive understanding. So I think the Meiri says there that matzah, that to find, it could mean two things. It could either mean to chance upon, like finding a lost object. Like someone else finding a lost object, like Elu Messios. Or it could mean that you're searching and then you finally found it. So I don't know what it means here. Either way, it's strange. Like, and it seemingly doesn't need to be said. You could just say like, it is on the derech tzedakah. Not that it will be found. Okay, I feel like those are all the questions. All right, so let me laboriously copy and paste this into the chat. I think we need 3 shipments this time. There's that. Oopsies. And
would you be able to repaste the translation also when you're done, please?
Yeah, sure. After I change all the numbers, because as smart as we are with AI, Zoom chat cannot figure out how to make numbers right. And the last one. Okay, this is 12 and 13 and 14. And then I will do the translation again. Okay. All righty. So let us take our thinking minute. And if you need a place to start, by the way, where I would start is just thinking about all the permutations of crown plus tzedakah equals, old age plus tzedakah equals crown. Old age without tzedakah does not equal crown. Tzedakah without old age does not equal crown. Like just thinking through those, comparing and contrasting. Okay, let's start with my dad.
So when I was living in Seattle, I had a next door neighbor who was in the 90s.
Yeah.
And we used to do Torah study on Shabbos.
Yeah.
Matt and Johnny would come over, and Alan was his name. Alan and I would be there, and we would usually discuss Mishlei or something. And what I noticed, and the boys pointed out, was when Alan would walk into the room, you would stand up.
Mm-hmm.
And you explained that was the kind of recognition you give to people of old age.
Right.
And I just thought this was a community.
That's
to tell the story.
So yeah, no, that's a good association. In fact, that it happens to work out because that's in this week's parsha here. Let's just do a little parsha. Yeah. Okay. So the pasuk is in Parshas Kedoshim, Vayikra 19:32. Mipnei seva takum v'hadarta pnei zaken v'yireisa melohecha ani Adonai. So literally, they don't have the good translation here. So literally, it is in the presence of a hoary head, right? Same thing here. Rise up and literally glorify the presence of an elder. But here we have this Torah Peh tells us that zaken is like someone who's acquired chachma. Let's see if Rashi probably says this. Yeah. So this is interesting. Okay, so it's very, very funny Rashi. I mean, there's a whole Gemara here also. Rashi says, Mipnei seva takum yachal zaken ashmai. So it says you should arise in the presence of a hoary head. So Rashi says you might think this is referring to literally a guilty elder or like a wicked elder. Let's see what the translation here says. An ignorant. Okay, so, ashmai. Okay, I don't know what the lashon of ashmai is. Tamlomar zaken ein zaken ela shakana chachma. Zaken only applies one who acquired chachma. But then the Onkelos I think says min kadam desavar ba'oraisa takum v'sehedar ape saba. So he reverses it. He says that seva in this pasuk refers to someone who's a Torah sage, but you should honor the presence of an elder. And halakhically, we do paskin. I think this is a universal psak that we show honor to someone who is of old age per se, And I think it's machlokas whether it is someone who is of the age of 70 and up, or someone who is considered extremely old, and that would be different based on I guess on average ages. So yeah, so that is a relevant thing, is that according to the Torah itself, okay, Vayikra 19:32, we do show honor to someone who has old age. But then I think this raises a question, which is, I mean, it's not like a knockout question, but the question is, we do this even if they don't, practice. I guess if they're not characterized by tzedakah per se. So the question is, what is the relationship between that halacha and this pasuk? So I think it's just a good question to keep in the back of our minds here. But yeah, it is a relevant observation. Yeah, Isaiah?
Okay. I was thinking about actually something that we read on Shabbos.
Okay.
The thing that we said would be like a good eulogy piece.
Yeah.
So maybe what this is saying is that like the seva can be an Ateris Tiferes, like it's able to be a crown of glory if you apply yourself in the ways of tzedakah. So like the way that a person is able to grow up and end up like I guess what it means in the first half is like old age can be like a sign that you lived a good life if you like actually did live a good life and like did like improved yourself throughout your life. And the way for, I think what Mishlei is saying is like the way for people to do that as they get older is to apply themselves in the area of tzedakah as opposed to just like gathering chachma or other good areas, because tzedakah is like the way to actually in the Mishlei framework like really perfect yourself.
Okay. Okay. So old age can be a crown of splendor if you apply yourself in a tzedakah way. That's fine. When I wrote that, I meant like in a tzedakah type way, but like that's literally what the pasuk says. It can be a sign that you lived a good life, and if you did live a good life, meaning your hoary head can be a sign that you lived a good life if you did live a good life. Mishlei is saying that the way to do this as you age is by applying yourself in tzedakah, since that's where true perfection lies. So that really is where now that brings Ayala's question into sharp relief, which is why specifically tzedakah. While we think about that, I cannot help but quote one of my favorite Seneca on the shortness of life. Is this the translation that I like? Probably, if it's in the Shall Have It folder. I mean, this whole thing is good, but oh yeah, here we go. Wait. Hold on a second. Let me see if I can find Seneca on the shortness of life, because I think he has a specific oh no, that's the book summary. Full text. I think he says this specifically. Gray. Yeah. So he says, let's just back up into this for a little bit. But the person who devotes every second of his time to his own needs and who organizes each day as if it were a complete life, neither longs for nor is afraid of the next day. For what new kind of pleasure is there that any hour can now bring? Everything has been experienced, everything enjoyed to the full. For the rest, fortune may make arrangements as it wishes. His life has already reached safety. Addition can be made to this life, but nothing taken away from it. Okay, I guess that's not relevant here. So there's no reason to believe that someone has lived long because he has gray hair and wrinkles. He's not lived long, but long existed. That's a big difference. For suppose you thought that a person had sailed far who'd been caught in a savage storm, and as soon as he left harbor, and after being carried in this direction and that, was driven in circles over the same course by alternations of the winds raging from different quarters. He didn't have a long voyage, but he was long tossed about. Okay, so that's a good thing for old age as well, right? It's like if you spend your whole life just involved in nonsense, and then you get to the end, you might have been through the years, you might have like traversed the distance, but you wouldn't call that a voyage in the sense. Okay, I thought he also said calendar, no, days. See, this is a different translation than the one I have. Give me one more second. There's a good one. Shortness of life. Maybe this is it. Okay, calendar. No. Years. Okay, never mind. I can't find it. Okay, never mind. All right, anyway, everyone should read On the Shortness of Life by Seneca. Okay. Yeah. So why specifically tzedakah?
Yeah. So what I was thinking is that, like, in the Mishlei framework, like, tzedakah is the culmination of Mishlei. Like, you're working on Mishlei so that you can be able to be at the level of a tzaddik and care about the system and whatever else we said about a tzaddik.
Right. Okay. So tzedakah is the culmination of Mishlei, and let's just briefly define it here. Working definition is basically doing what you can to bring each member of the system, including yourself, in line with your objective needs, with the objective needs of human beings. Okay. Right. Yeah. So in other words, so Chachma is, we do hold that Chachma is an end in and of itself, but not in Mishlei. That would be something like in shiurim, and Chachma in Mishlei is like a means to bring that about, which is funny, by the way. Now that I look at it, that's, I've never noticed this before. Let's just see if I'm hallucinating. Does Mishlei not advertise becoming a tzaddik in the mission statement? Wow, if so, that's really weird. It says, Mishlei Shlomo ben David, Melech Yisrael, the Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel, or king in Israel, of Israel. Ladas chachma musar, to know wisdom and discipline. Lahavin yimrei bina, to understand statements of understanding. Lakachas musar haska, oh, tzedek, there you go. Whew. Okay, that would be really, really weird. To take intelligent musar, tzedek umishpat umesharim. So I guess we do have to fit it into that. But I think if you are going to boil it down to one thing, then tzedakah would be the case. Also, fun fact, in the Gemara in Makos, that says there's 613 mitzvos, and then it says, and then David came and reduced it to 11, and then Yeshayahu came and reduced it to 6. When it tries to like condense all the mitzvos, it goes down to 6, and then down to 3, and then down to 2, and then down to 1. Anyone know what if you could condense all 630 mitzvahs into one mitzvah, anyone know what the mitzvah is? Not a pre-existing mitzvah, it's like the in the Gemara there. Anyone remember or know? It is tzaddik be'emunaso yichya. A tzaddik will live by his conviction. Okay, so it also reduces the tzaddik, but plus emunah, plus knowledge. Okay, so does this answer our question? Questions. And I feel like this is definitely a good start of an idea, but is this a whole thing? So I think we still need to answer the question of what is the benefit here? Like why do I want a crown of splendor? And this does not need to be a fancy answer. I think we just need to answer it though. Yeah, Isaiah?
I thought it was, the crown of splendor is saying this is how you, like your old age can be a sign that you lived a good life if you did this thing and became the person that Mishlei wants you to be. Like, right. I guess.
But why do I need it?
Isn't specifically a thing. It's more of saying like old age can be the hair on your head can be a crown.
Okay, so in other words, this is not saying. So in other words, according to this, crown is not something you earn when you get old. It's saying that old age can be a crown if it reflects a life well lived. In other words, because I think there are other ways to learn crown, for example, that like crown equals glory or kavod or like recognition. You're not saying that. You're saying like like people speak of like a crowning achievement, although I think that's also like could lend itself to both interpretations. So you're saying, in other words, according to you, this would not really be saying anything different if it said like to reach good old age, then it's through the derech tzedakah, right? Like crown is not like a specific integral part of your idea. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess
yeah.
It's kind of like counteracting the Havamina is that just anyone who has old age is
okay.
That's a crown. It's not like anyone. Yeah.
Okay. Will automatically be viewed this way. Okay. Yeah. So I think that is also important to just articulate here is that I do think, see, this is, I don't want to say that this is a separate idea because I think this could fit into many ideas here, is I do think that there is an archetype in people's mind of the wise elder, and I think it's different. The wise old man, the wise old woman. I think there's like different associations, but I think probably people feel that like, that's like a guarantee that you could like cash in on, once you get there. And what it's saying is that, in other words, you can't just expect that status. I keep on bringing in status into here because I do think crown has to do with that. To be attained automatically, okay, if it's not supported by doing the work and having a track record. Okay, in other words, I think it's two things. I think for yourself, you definitely need to do the work to get there. But like for the people to view you that way, if you do want to bring this into the public sphere, I think you need to have the track record here, and so like, you can have the old man who is who's viewed as like a burden on society. You could have the old man who's like the creepy old man. You could have the old man who is the crazy old man. There's a lot of old archetypes that are not going to be this. There are a lot of old negative archetypes. So like burden, creepy, crazy, cranky, that aren't this. Yeah, Tamar?
I was just gonna say, the archetype that I was thinking of that's also not this is there's a type of, I think, very sad old person where they don't have the wisdom of age and it makes you sad.
Yeah, right. I think that is a good sad, and sometimes it's sad like that. Sometimes it's regretful sad. Sometimes it's bitter sad. There's a lot of bad examples of that. Yeah, I have to mention this. Oh yeah, I'll go ahead.
I was just gonna add also that it could be like he'll be viewed like a crown is something that people see if we're like taking the essence of it, because tzedakah is something where he's giving to society. So now at a time where he's vulnerable and he's just taking, people know that he built up society to where it is, so they don't feel like bitter about him.
That's good. Okay, so I think that's actually a better answer to the question. Not a better answer, but a more specific answer, which is that this is Ayala's answer number 2, which is that tzedakah is visible. So not only will people recognize this, but that recognition can counter the effects of how people might otherwise view this old person, and it is interesting because like even when someone is not necessarily sad, but even when someone is like, again, maybe not creepy, if they lose their mind or if they're a burden, people will relate to them differently if this is a person who contributed so much to the society. I do have to share this, even though this may or may not be related to Isaiah's approach. But what is it called? Aging. There's this great painting by Christopher Muller, but this great Drushos Haran article here. So there's a Mishnah in Kinim, because we all learn Mishnah Kinim. Okay, that says Rabbi Shimon ben Akashia says, elderly unlearned men, as long as they continue to age, their da'as their mind becomes even more agitated or literally scrambled. As it is stated, he removes the speech of the capable and takes away the reasoning of the elderly. But Torah elders are not like that. Rather, as long as they continue to age, their das becomes even more settled, misyashevis, as it is stated, in the aged is wisdom, and in length of days understanding. Now, I think this could fit into our pasuk, but I just want to read the Ran. This was brought to my mind when it's not what Tamar said, but brought to my mind by Tamar. So the Ran says, this does not mean that as long as the Torah elders continue to age, the more their wisdom increases, for it is possible that this won't happen, since the intellect is dependent upon the physical faculties, senses, imagination, memory, all of which function through the brain, which is a physical organ. It is possible that when these men become exceedingly old and these faculties weaken, the intellect will also become weakened. So they didn't know about, Alzheimer's, but they knew that old people sometimes lose their faculties. Rather, so it does not mean that they continue to become wise as they get older. Rather, when the Mishnah said their das becomes even more settled, its meaning is as follows. In their youth, the Torah elders gave up their addictions to the pleasures of the physical world and chose the path of the good. Therefore, as they continue to age, their das becomes more settled. This means that as they become more reconciled with themselves and their das became at ease with the decision of their youth. In other words, even though they decided in their youth to abandon their addictions to the pleasures of the physical world and its excesses, it is impossible that they were not occasionally drawn to them. Even though their intellect opposed this and prevented them from being seduced by the physical pleasures, it is impossible that they did not desire them to some degree. Therefore, their das was not completely settled in their youth, for they were caught between two opposing forces. Oh, I got to edit this. Okay. In other words, in order to become a Torah elder, you need to become a Torah youth. And when you become a Torah youth, you're giving up on a lot of pleasures, on a lot of the other things that youths go and partying and all that other stuff. Okay. But the more they continue to age, the more these desires weaken. Their imaginative faculty sees that everything it once fantasized about in the matters of the physical world was pointless, transient, and utterly futile. At that point, it is no longer necessary for their intellect to oppose the imaginative faculty and to dissent. Therefore, their das is settled, their mind is settled, for they clearly see that they had chosen the good and resolved to follow it, and everything they had forfeited in matters of the physical world was worthless, and that there is no cause for feeling anxiety over its forfeiture. The opposite befalls the unlearned elders. This is what I want to get to with Tamar's thing. In their youth, they were seduced by their addictions to the pleasures of the physical world. Their das was at ease and reconciled with this, and they didn't care about their intellect's opposition, meaning the fact that the intellect opposed this. But as they continue to age, the physical world withdraws from them, and they withdraw from it. They see that everything they once desired and chose in their youth was but nothingness, vanity, and that they only inherited falsehood. Because of this, their das is not settled with the decision of their youth. Nevertheless, since they did not learn righteousness, and they had become habituated and sunken in their bad habits, their intellect lacks the ability to turn completely away from the path which they have taken until now. Therefore, as they continue to age, they will be caught between the two paths, and the path will not be theirs. Meaning that they'll see that the physical world was futile and they can't get it anymore, but they physically can't access it. That the life of pleasure, and then they now recognize that there was a whole other world of chachma, but they didn't invest in that, so they can't partake of it. This is what the rabbis of blessed memory intended by the expression their das is agitated, mitarefes, as in the expression a ship that is mitarefes, like a ship that's turbulent on the seas. This expression refers to a ship in the middle of the ocean with oppressive waves thrusting the ship from one side to the other, and its sailors are unable to guide it on a single path. Instead, the wind pushes, sometimes to one side and sometimes to the opposite. Likewise are those seduced by their addictions to the physical pleasures of this world as they continue to age. For in their youth, their das was settled, but in old age, their das is agitated. And that's, I think, what Tamar, one of the causes of what Tamar was talking about, of the sad old people where they invested all of their energy in developing things that are tied to the physical world. So once they lose the physical, they invested in their looks, and their looks are deteriorating. They invested in their ability to go out and make a name for themselves, and their reputation is being forgotten. They invested in their friends and family. Their friends and family are dying, But if you invest in something that is eternal, that you can be involved in, until you die or until your mind goes, so then you have something in old age. And that's why I think people who don't have that can be depressed, especially after retirement. Okay. I think this is good for Isaiah. I think we're going to supplement this when we do some of the Mefarshim, because I think this is a good candidate for probably what the pshat of the pasuk is. Anything else anyone wants to add to this before we go to Rivki? Okay, Rivki, you're up.
Okay, so definitely a lot of things that I was thinking is, in there in Isaiah's idea. So, except I think the biggest difference is how I perceive what a crown represents.
Okay.
I was really thinking, like, the first thing that came to mind was like Erickson's stages of, development. And, if you can be, I think it's like, I forgot the first one, but it's something versus despair. So like basically like success.
Can I look it up?
Yeah, you could.
Erickson
I
stages.
think it's integrity versus despair.
Integrity, that's what it is. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Integrity versus despair, the last one there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, kind of similar to what Tamara was saying, that I think that based on what we achieve in our lives, we definitely have the ability to like affect our perception of ourselves. Like our perception of ourselves is always growing and developing.
Yeah.
That's kind of the first thing that this brought to mind, is that the crown of splendor could really only happen if you spend your life on the path. And that's why I think also it uses the word derech. Derech is it's a path, it's a journey, it's not a destination, it's not, a one-time thing. So that was like the main, part of my idea. And I think that why I was thinking about crown is more similar to what you were saying, what you thought Isaiah was saying, that I think a crown is physical. So it's like a physical representation of something you would hope that's internal. So I was interpreting it as a perception that others see of you, but also of yourself. And that's where it connects to the first half of what I was saying, that it's not just how you see yourself, but it also is how others view you, and that will affect how others treat you and, hold you in esteem.
Okay, so crown is a physical and visible representation of something that is not actually visible, right? Like the fact that someone is a king is not really visible, but the crown is the symbol of that. So not only will you get the actually, I don't know if I want to frame it as not only will you get the self perception, but you also get other people, but maybe it's kind of tied into one another as well. So I'll just say you will get both the self image and the reinforcement. There's a better word that I'm looking for than reinforcement. Validation. I don't know. Validation from others who will inevitably, or inevitably see that tzedakah, that in your life. So yeah. All right, that's good. Yeah, I what do I like better about this? I mean, I think it fits with what Isaiah is saying also. I think I just like it because to me, it seems like the crown part is a very prominent feature of the pasuk. And I feel like you could write Isaiah's idea purely just about old age without the crown. So I feel like if we can, the more we can like incorporate the crown into this, then the better of an interpretation of the pasuk it is, even if we get to similar ideas. I think that's why I like it better.
One more thing I was thinking, this, I'm not sure if you're gonna like, that was like the main part, but I was thinking that I think, and this could be like a 20-25 perception of when Shlomo wrote this, but I really think that older people oftentimes are like, disregarded. And I know that it depends on the culture, and that certain cultures, they are really seen as, like you were saying, the wise, person to go to. But at least in our society, I definitely think that that's true. I mean, that's, nursing homes and all these things, and they're totally disregarded. And this is saying, like, I think a way to, prevent that, or a way to fix that, would be to encourage more, tzedakah, and encourage more righteousness in your whole life, and then that way it's kind of
right. Oh, that's good also, right? So in other words, like this can be an antidote to that if you follow this plan, then you will increase your chances of being recognized and valued in your old age. And I think that's true. I mean, like you see that's what happens with certainly happens with Talmidei Chachamim. I would like to think it happens with Balei Chesed as well, but I just I don't have as ready examples of. So I saw Isaiah do the party thing, and then Ayala as well. Isaiah, did you want to add something?
I had like a question a little bit.
Yeah.
I guess why specifically tzedakah according to this idea? Seems like chachma and other things could improve your self-image as well.
Right. That's a good question.
Well, I think in terms of the second half, even both of them, I think that it definitely, like chachma, yes, like you could get somewhat of a following, but I don't think that you'll get the same following and therefore, recognition. That's where the crown comes in if it's only chachma. like maybe that's a naive approach, but I think that's true. I think that tzedakah has like Ayala was saying, I think tzedakah has a more outward and worldly approach than what chachma does.
Right. Yeah, I see that. I do think that I guess, you know, because the example I was saying that it'd be very interesting to see like what academics who are old, who like, you know, our Talmidei Chachamim tend to, you know, go hand in hand with chachma, you know, sorry, with tzedakah. Whereas in the academic world, I don't know if that's the case. You know, it'd be interesting to see, and it's kind of hard because they're also not in religious communities necessarily. Just be interesting to see like what the what this phenomenon looks like there. You know, if it's pure chachma. Yeah, let's go Ayala, then Rivki.
I'm just going to respond to that question also, is I feel like you have the idea of like the ivory tower, like the chacham in an ivory tower, academic in an ivory tower. And I feel like for that, it's like, while they have the chachma, maybe they're respected because they have it, but maybe once like they're older and they kind of lose that, they're not going to be respected, because I feel like actions are really like show the essence of a person. I don't know, at least externally. I think chachma also could be, but like I think the actions are like real living of it. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess because with tzedakah, then the impact. That's interesting. Yeah, I guess every time I try to think about where tzedakah, the actions last, even if you aren't able to do it anymore, or like the benefit of it last. The same thing happens with chachma as well, you know. And then I think to myself, oh well, people relate to the tzaddik differently, but then will people still relate to the chacham differently also? I don't know. The point you're making is good. I just don't. I don't know how. If I can answer the question based on that. Yeah, Rivki?
Yeah, just not related to Isaiah's question, but one last point I wanted to make about this concept was that I think another point about, you know, the old age, why are we talking about old age here? Why does it have to be an older person? I think that an older person there's like more of an aura around them. Like I think that if you practice tzedakah when you're, you know, let's say in your 30s, not that that's bad, like that's amazing and that's how you will get there, but I think that the recognition and perception is different when it is someone who is older and therefore has been doing it the entire time.
Right. I think that's true also. So that and that's going to be for better or for worse, right? In other words, I do think part of the reason why people neglect old people is, I mean, I don't think it's a chiddush, but like, you know, you don't want to think about your own mortality. So when you see someone who is just old and there's no redeeming qualities, it's like you actively don't want to think about that person. Whereas if you see someone, maybe this is a new approach now. Hold on a second here. Let me capture this down here. Okay, is that this is my accidental shot, which is that there is an innate I don't want to say revulsion, that's too strong, but like
resistance.
Yeah, I would say reaction to seeing an old person that comes from our own identification with them and our now here's resistance to thinking about our own mortality. So in a vacuum, you know, we don't want to bring this to mind because it's uncomfortable. Okay. However, if there is a redeeming quality, in this case, and again, this is not exclusive, but in this case, tzedakah, then we can see ourselves in that old person and you know, be inspired by them, and that works out great for them and for us, right? For them because they get that crown, and for us because it actively helps us to, you know, become tzaddikim and repeat the cycle. Yeah. All right, that whoopsies, accidental shot there. Okay. Yeah, Rivki, you want to add something?
No, I'm just going to make a quick comment that I love that. And I think it's very accurate. Like I was just thinking about like when I interact with an older person who is, you're inspired by it and it makes you want to be able to get to that point and like reach that, as opposed to like, you know, the opposite when you're like, oh no, like I don't want to get old. Like there's something really special about what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. By the way, on that note, I don't know if you saw, I quoted your grandfather, the Professor Yaakov Elman, in my article on Friday. So yeah. But I hear good things about him from everyone who talks about him. So yeah. Okay. Noah, you're up.
Okay, so a lot of this has been said, but like not directly as this idea, I think. I think that the speaker is somebody's Rebbe, and the audience is a bunch of 14-year-old boys who are all competing to be, the best tzaddikim in the class. And it's saying, pay attention to old people. At least notice them if you're not going to hang out with them, because we're talking about, the worth and the value of different old people here. Like, are you wise? Are you a tzaddik? Like, yeah, like if Warren Buffett walks in the room, people are going to line up,
Yeah.
he's quite old, but a random old person, we kind of forget that society decides who is useful and who isn't, and we're part of society, and we have a responsibility to make sure that people are not lonely and living out a horrible end of their life just because we don't know their value to us. We don't know what kind of great investment advice they can give us, or wonderful wisdom from all their years of study, or tips and tricks for a happy marriage or whatever. We have to decide to recognize their value, because if we don't, that kind of takes away from our own value if we are someone who can just neglect another human being. So yeah, that's my idea.
That's a good idea. Yeah. And I also, I just borrowed your investment muscle for, we have to collectively invest in producing that value in the society so that it will be there for when we get there. There's a program at Nija, at the school that I teach at, where it's called Better Together, where they have like a, I've never actually been there because it's not on the times when I'm there, but like they like go to I don't know if it's an old age home, assisted living facility. I don't know what the proper category is, but they basically just go there and like have conversations with more like organized discussions to promote like an exchange of views with the elders. So I think that's like a good way to do that, because it does not happen naturally, at least in our society. Yes, my dad has a point now.
So the kind of wisdom that I think it's talking about for the elderly is the wisdom that comes from life's lessons. Those lessons are things that you learn by the experience, actual experience of living through those things. That knowledge cannot be disseminated to any other source. So in that area, they have Hakma, even if they've led an upheaval in or unsuccessful life. They will have certain experiences that give them a wisdom that cannot be matched in any other way.
Yeah, that is definitely the case. I think I wrote an article about that also, when I wrote about Uncle William, who at the time, this is our great Uncle William, who at the time was 101, and he died at 102, I think. And so I quoted the Sefer HaChinuch, who says, I think he says that. Yeah, no, someone else says that. I think, yeah, one person says it's because he saw the wonders of Hashem. Another person says because it's the life experience, the wisdom from life experience. Yeah, that's good. I wonder if we can use that to answer. See, I wonder if this, I'm going to just speculate here. Okay, speculation is that, so my question is like, that might be true, but what does it have to do with the pasuk? So I think the answer to that, one answer to that is like, there can be a certain value in life experience, but unless that life experience is in the value system of tzedakah, then its worth is questionable. Okay, so to use an extreme example that I think we can all agree with is like, I'm sure Hugh Hefner has a lot of life experience, you know, but he's not someone I'm going to go to aspire to draw upon, because his life experience is probably going to be in terms of like how to get girls, you know, and like how to party and how to become rich. How, like that's not the kind of life experience that a Torah person is going to like be looking for. So it's not just the life experience that's valuable. It has to be life experience in the right value system. Not that you can't learn them from them otherwise, but like I think in terms of what Mishlei promotes. Yeah, Noah?
Who is wise? One who learns from everyone. Like, I feel like even people who live outside of any value system that you're comfortable with,
Right.
There is still wisdom for you to glean from them, even if it's not something they've processed in a way that
Right.
it's like a neat little package where,
No,
you know,
so
I'm going to give
yeah.
Rabbi Shnei Weiss advice. It's like, that's not the thing. But
No,
if you
I'm not disagreeing
there,
with that at all. I'm saying that's not going to be the crown that he's talking about here, I don't think. I'm trying to say, yeah, well, let me put it this way. Whether or not you agree with that statement, I don't think that's what Shlomo was saying. Shlomo was saying that, so it was like the recipes like that, or the steps are like this. My dad is saying that there is a certain life wisdom that comes from old age, right? That I agree with. Shlomo is saying the crown needs that and tzedakah. And what I'm trying to understand is, why is that not enough? And what I'm claiming is that you, if there's a crown, again, Shlomo, we can assume Shlomo is talking to a Torah audience here, that the crown is going to come about from the old age in a life lived through tzedakah, whereas someone who is old and lived a life of foolishness or rishus, you know, will still have life wisdom, but that's not going to be a crown.
Well, you're imposing an interpretation on the pasuk already, which my interpretation doesn't require. Because the point of the way I'm interpreting it is you're telling the young folks, if you want to be on the path of the righteous, you go out there and you do it, and you'll find a bunch of old people there. And I'm telling you that they have inherent worth. Figure it out.
Yeah. Okay. So
even Hugh Hefner.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, let's look at some Mefarshim here. I want to do at least 2 of them, if not 3. So I did not look at the Metzudas David yet. I usually don't look at him beforehand because he's so short. Okay, so Haholech B'derech Tzedakah, one who walks on the path of tzedakah. Tzedakah. Timsa bo ateres tiferes, will find a crown of splendor. Sorry, Timsa bo ateres tiferes seva, of old age. I don't know exactly how to parse this. Ki yarbe yamim bigdula v'tiferes, for he will increase his days in greatness and splendor. Okay, this is a much more pshat interpretation than I think what we were thinking. So what is he saying here? I'm not even gonna ask for a summary. I think you just have to go straight to the main idea. Yeah, Ella?
That somebody who's involved in tzedakah will live longer.
Yeah, I think so, right? Someone who is involved in tzedakah will live longer. Okay. And that life will also bring glory. Okay. And the question is how. So I think like on several levels, but like, you know, on a basic level, you know, better decisions. On a more advanced level, shaping their society. On a more advanced level, developing, you know, midos that you know, promote concern for others, and that diminish the ego, you know, and many more. Yeah. Rivki, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just had a question on this because this was my initial thought.
Oh, okay.
I didn't like it because I was like, well, I feel like that's not really all. And I know we don't go by what's always true because, you know, there's always the rule. But yeah, I mean, like, obviously, like, there's Sadik Varalo and like it's not so simple. So, like, what would you say to that?
Yeah, I would say that this is still good advice. The advice is that you know, tzedakah tatil mimaves, that tzedakah does by its nature save from death by prolonging your life, and yeah, you could, suffer a premature death for a number of reasons, but that doesn't mean that the advice is bad advice. Like if you want to, the same thing, no one's going to say like, if someone says like, oh, eat healthy and you'll live longer. If someone responded to their doctor by saying, yeah, but I could get hit by a train, that doesn't invalidate the advice, Yeah. Okay, let's do, I think that was an easy one. Okay, I think it's pretty good. And then just in terms of the, let's just do subject plus practical application plus audience. Let's try to tackle one of those, because I feel like there is I feel like there is, we do have to answer like all of Mishlei says you do tzedakah, live a life of tzedakah. So like why focus on this? I'll give a basic one, okay? On a basic level, whenever you see anything online about someone who reached a milestone of old age, they always ask, what was the secret? And the person gives a dumb answer, okay? A dumb answer, usually, not all, answer, like, always go to bed with a shot of whiskey, or like, I love pickles, like it's just always some like dumb thing, So people want a secret. Yeah, that one might be true. People want a secret for old age, okay? And if you're looking for that security, you won't get that. But the best you can do is follow this, because this is demonstrably going to prolong your life. And then again, that's all throughout Mishlei. Like I think you will live certainly a better qualitative life, if not a quantitative better life, but also a quantitative better life. If you look, we did tzaddik ochel l'sova nafsho ubet Yerushalayim techsar, that part of being a tzaddik is eating healthy, and eating healthy is going to make you reduce your chances of dying from disease, and like I don't know, there's like a lot of upswing about this. Yeah, Isaiah.
Another thing is that this is like a good low lishma of like you want to get a person to get more involved in Mishlei, like it'll help you live longer. Like everyone wants to live for a long time.
Right. Yeah, that's good. So it's old age is a good low lishma, and by the time you get there practicing tzedakah, you'll want to live longer lishma, because then you'll actually be attached to good values. Okay, let's do Rבינו Yona. This I translate with ChatGPT, but I'm going to check it over. Baladaber b'malas hatzedakah. So he, hold on a second. It didn't even translate it. It paraphrased it, so we're going to delete it. I hate it when it does that. It rarely does that, but when it does, I get upset because I asked it to translate. Okay, so baladaber. So he comes to speak b'malas hatzedakah, of the virtue of tzedakah. So I guess this is the beginning of a new section according to Rבינו Yona, maybe. Upasak laha'ir, he begins by pointing out about it, aleha b'shevach haseva, by pointing out the praiseworthiness of old age. Vamar, saying ki haseva min ha'taros hanichbados, that old age is one of the venerable crowns. Lefi shetishalim das ha'ish be'es haseva, because a person's mind is mature or perfected, however you want to say it, at the time of old age. Gam nechka min hanisyonos, that's what my dad was saying, and he becomes wise from life experience. V'yavin la'achriso, and he understands his end. So this is what caught my eye about this Rבינו Yona here. He's saying that there's 3 advantages to old age here. There is, you're going to be smarter, wiser, whatever. you're going to have the life experience, and your mortality is going to be real to you, which, by the way, I think is what Ibn Ezra says about why we stand for old people. Yeah, he says, in the presence of old age you shall rise on account of a dead person, because an elder is close to death. In other words, when you stand up for an old person, according to Ibn Ezra, you should think, oh, this person is like close to death, since his body is considered to be as though it is dead. The meaning of you shall fear your God is that he will punish you in the days of old age. So in other words, they're like a walking memento mori, like a walking reminder of mortality. So this person has that. Since a person should yearn for this crown, he will be motivated by this for the desire, towards the desire for tzedakah. Old age is found on the path of tzedakah. As it is written, Miha isha chavetz chaim, who is the man who desires life? And that's Tehillim 34:13. Let's just read that pasuk in context. 34:13. So I guess we should, it's several pasukim that he's going to quote here. 34. Miha isha chavetz chaim, ohev yamim le'rostov. Who is the man who desires life, who loves days to see good? Nitzor l'shoncha me'ra, guard your tongue from evil, usfasacha midabrim mirma, and your lips from speaking deceitfully. Sur me'rav aseh tov, turn away from evil and do good. Bakei shalom v'rod fehu, seek peace and pursue it. Rubin, I think, quotes that other one also. V'nemar, and it is said, turn away from evil and do good. That's Tehillim 34:15. Bekasuv, and it is written, Rodif tzedakah v'chesed yimtza chaim. One who chases tzedakah, tzedakah and chesed will find life. And that's Mishlei 21:21. And let me just see what the second half of that pasuk says in case that's relevant also. Mishlei 21:21. Rodif tzedakah v'chesed Rodif tzedakah v'chesed. Oh yeah, this is a weird one. One who chases tzedakah and chesed, yimtza chaim tzedakah v'chavod, will find life, tzedakah, and honor. Yeah, I remember doing this one in yeshiva. This is a weird one. Yeah. Okay, so that is what Rabbeinu Yona says here. Okay, so what is the main idea? Yeah, Ayala?
Seems to me that he's saying maybe that like this crown of splendor or whatever, which comes with old age, meaning like these three great things that you get when you're old, like is desirable. But the way to get there is only through a path of tzedakah. So it's kind of telling you, if you want this crown, then take the path of tzedakah.
Right. Can only, and it is interesting. He doesn't, let's see. So yeah, it does sound as it can only be attained through tzedakah. So you should, so if you want it, get involved in tzedakah. So I think that is an interesting thing, because let's be honest here, okay? Some of us come from an environment, a culture that values intellectual knowledge, and it is easy to get caught up in a world where you were just learning and not doing tzedakah. I'm sure many yeshivas have this problem where, like, people are just involved in learning Torah all day, and they think that that's going to be it. So how do you motivate someone like that to do tzedakah? Well, one thing is one of the ways to do it is you lure them with chachma, and that's what he's doing here. He's basically, in other words, he's using tzedakah as a lo lishma for the benefits of old age. Okay. In Chachma. And so the audience, I think, might be close to Noah's audience here, is yeshiva bochrim who want to max out their Chachma. Okay, and he's telling them that this is going to only happen if it's through tzedakah. So it's kind of the opposite of what we said for Metzudas David, what Isaiah said. Metzudas David is saying that you really want to be old for lo lishma reasons. But this is saying, no, you want to be old for lishma reasons, like attachment to chachma. So you do tzedakah for lo lishma reasons, yeah. So that's an interesting thing. And I think I do sense that we don't really need to spell this out about how you get that, because there's so many other psukim about how tzedakah gets you to old age, that I don't think he's like addressing that in this pasuk here. Yeah, but this is an important thing because, like, look, I can, speaking, as someone who's middle aged, like, you just wake up one day and like, oh, like I'm, probably at the halfway mark, and like, like it's, in other words, it's easy to convince yourself that you're going to be involved in tzedakah at some future date, but like, before you know it, then boom, it's gone. So like, you have to like start practicing early. The life hack I would give is that I find, this is a personal life hack. This might not work for everyone, but like much of my tzedakah I do through learning, through like doing above and beyond in the realm of learning. So I get to like capitalize on that also, but it is tzedakah, like it's giving up time and resources to do that. All right, let's do one more. Is the Meiri good? Oh yeah, let's do the Meiri here. Okay, this one I actually did start to check over in ChatGPT, but it's still translated. After warning all people in general to distance themselves from despicable traits. That was in the previous pasukim. Now he warns the elder. So he is learning that this is not for the young people, like the other pasukim. This is warning the elder. Ukamamar hachacham she'amar, like the chacham who said, "Oy kama megune haksilos bezaken." How disgraceful is foolishness in an elder? Okay. Amru, and they also said, so this old guy came to a chassid and pleaded with him to rebuke him and instruct him about his actions. Vaishivo hachassid, and the chassid responded, where is the rebuker to teach you in your skull? What do they say here? Where's the rebuke that should have come from your scalp? Okay, fine. V'lo and he didn't understand. V'shal mimenu levar lo dvar. He asked him to explain himself. Amar, he said, Lo hilbin habore haser hashachor rak lahazir or lahaskir kiasevus shlichem maves. That's a nice one. That God only whitens black hair to warn you and remind you that old age is the agents of death. V'da, and you should know, ki chet hana'ar chashuv chet echad. The sin of a youth is considered one sin. Chet hazakin chashuv ke'elef. The sin of elder is considered like 1,000. Okay, but inyan, the idea, ki abal seva, I guess the idea of the pasuk is that someone who's has white hair, kolzman shemasav mitukanim hu kavod gadol. As long as his actions are good, are proper, corrected, whatever, so then his kavod is great. And people will bow down to him, I think meaning in honor, at his old age, which is mingled with good actions. Regarding this, it says that the crown of splendor is old age, or old age is the crown of splendor. Meaning that old age and white hair, who ateres tiferes, is a crown of splendor. Vesibas nachlas kavod mivnei, and it will cause you to get honor from people. But only if you find zikna in tzedakah. In uprightness and justice and good midos, and being careful not to have the opposite. Pasuk, the explanation is shaseva hi ateres tiferes. White hair is a crown of splendor. Kishetimsa b'derech tzedakah, when you find it on a path of tzedakah. And in regards to chachma, this is warning you not to rely in your learning on the teaching of youth. I think this is meaning when youths teach. Hanimshel b'masakas avos anavim kehos, which are compared in avos to bitter grapes, or sour grapes. I mean, so hu chachma lomin mikol adam, but they're still sour grapes if they're young. V'shiz dars lilmon lifnei azkenim hanodaim b'mumchim. But he's urging you to learn from in front of the elders who are known by experts. Ki bahem timsa hachachma hamyusheres, because that's where you'll find proper chachma. Hu mashal ha'anavim hamuvushalos shenosnim piryam be'itam. That's compared to mature grapes that give their fruit in their time. Yeah. Okay, so I think his main idea is in the first half here. I mean, his second idea is also part of the main idea, but we said that already. So what's the Meiri's main idea? It's funny because he says that this is warning the old person, but I feel like it's not warning the person who's too old, right? This is like the person who's starting to get there, you know? See, it's funny because the pshat he gave of the pasuk is very similar to what we said, which is that you're only going to get kavod from people for your old age when it's mixed with good actions. But he's saying that the reason why this pasuk is here is to warn old people. So given the fact that people will only honor your hoary head if your actions and midos are good, and given the fact that then you'd better heed the reminders that God sends you when your hair starts to get white. Okay. And I'm going to add here and other signs of aging. Okay. There are more than just white hair. Because there is a closing window of opportunity, and you shouldn't waste time, especially because bad traits are amplified in the old. And I've said this before, that like I think one of the biggest things I've benefited from Donald Trump is I think it's a total shattering of this belief that old age automatically brings wisdom, you know? And like, I think, and I'm saying this from his first presidency, is like, I think when I first found out that he was like in his 70s, I was just shocked. I was like, how is it possible for someone in their 70s to miss basic points about like just how to conduct yourself with other people, you know? And like, it was a wake-up call that you can't like bank on that automatic thing. You have to like work on it constantly. So yeah, I don't think it's a new idea, but it is a new audience and a new method of applying it, which is like, you know, look at the signs of aging. I mean, I think a good technique that we can use that they could not use back then is photographs. I think whenever you see a photograph of yourself when you're younger, and you, or even other people when they're younger, the people that you know and you see now, it's just a reminder of aging, and like you should associate to this idea, especially when we see the white hair coming, you know. Like I'm getting to the point now also where like a lot of the people who I grew up with, you know, I'll suddenly realize like, oh wow, last time I saw them they didn't have white hair, you know. And so it's yeah, coming around the mountain. Okay. I think this is a good haul here, so let's do a review. We had Isaiah's idea, which was that which I think was the closest to the Meiri's, which is that old age is something that can be something that is well achieved, like that you could be a crown, either for yourself or for others, but only if you live in a way of tzedakah, and it's not automatic. That's what the Meiri was saying. The Meiri added that it could backfire. Then we have Rivki's idea, which is that you also need to be able to view yourself in a good way in your old age, and it's nice to have other people viewing you that way also, and it could be complementary, but you have to work on that and get on the tzedakah plan in order to get there. We also said that there is automatically an aura that older people can have, but you want to make sure that that is something that your reality aligns with their, you know, like expectation of greatness. And then that led to my idea, which is that there is a reason why people don't want to think about or look at or spend time with old people, because it brings to mind their own mortality and illness and infirmity and shortness of life and all the other stuff. And so the way to counteract that is by embodying something that they can look up to. And then that benefits both people, because the old person ends up getting the recognition and also the engagement with younger people, which is good for their life and quality of life. And the younger people get to learn from the elders, and it helps them with tzedakah, and then that perpetuates the cycle. And then we had Rabbeinu, we had the Metzudas David's idea, which is that tzedakah will actually like prolong your life, statistically speaking. And certainly, even if not in quantity, then in quality. And we said, why does he have to say a pasuk devoted to this when there are so many other pasukim about Mishlei? Because people always want the secret to long life. And saying tzedakah is the secret is the best hack. Like, better than pickles. Pickles is not going to help yourself or society, but tzedakah will. And then Rabbeinu Yona is saying that if you want all the perks of the chachma of old age, which in our society, thank God, we are that is one of the reasons why we admire elders. Like I think many people, whereas not all societies is that valued. So then you should do tzedakah as a lo lishma to get there. And then there's the Meiri's idea. Okay, nice pasuk. Very different format, but I'm happy with the results. Okay, I hope everyone has a good week where they use all their time for tzedakah and aging well. See ya. Until next time.
Thank you.